Imagine you're on a flight, surrounded by strangers, when suddenly an innocent little girl becomes the target of a shocking act of hatred, and no one knows what will happen next. But in that critical moment, one unexpected hero rises, changing everything. Stay with us, because what unfolds will leave you speechless, heartbroken, and inspired all at once. Dear viewer, what you are about to witness is not just a story. It is a powerful testament to the quiet power and pursuit of justice in places most people ignore. If this is your first time here, I warmly invite you to share where you are watching in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, challenge you, or make you think, consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon. We share voices that deserve to be heard every day. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get into the story. No one boarding Flight 729 from Miami to San Francisco that bright July morning could have predicted how a single moment would rip through their lives, leaving scars that would not fade with time. They were all just passengers at first, suitcases rolling behind them, coffee cups clutched tightly in tired hands, eyes scanning ticket stubs for seat numbers. The typical pre-flight scramble, filled with polite smiles and impatient sighs. Yet hidden among the routine hum of engines and flight announcements, something malignant and ancient was stirring, invisible but deadly. Something no security checkpoint could ever detect. Hate. It was a flight meant for new beginnings. For 6-year-old Olivia Grant, it was nothing less than the adventure of her young lifetime. Her brown eyes shone with the pure, unfiltered excitement only children know. She clutched her stuffed unicorn, Sparkle, to her chest as she skipped down the narrow aisle, her father, Marcus Grant, following close behind with their bags. Olivia's dreams were painted in vibrant colors. Visions of the Golden Gate Bridge, cable cars rattling up steep hills, the smell of salty air by the bay. Her small voice chimed in the cabin, pointing out cloud shapes through the windows and asking endless questions, her laughter light and musical. Some nearby passengers smiled warmly, remembering their own youthful wonder. Others, though, were less kind. In seat 4C, Nathan Carter sat rigidly, eyes narrow, fists already tightening around the cheap armrests. He wore the tired look of a man beaten down by life, but his anger simmered not from personal hardship. It had long since curdled into something uglier, a venom aimed outward. The moment Olivia's laughter floated toward him, his lips pressed into a thin, hateful line. The cheerful noise, so innocent to most, to Nathan sounded like an offense, like an invasion. His mind, poisoned over decades by prejudice and resentment, was already rewriting the scene. Not a child enjoying a flight, but a disruption that needed silencing. Across the aisle, in seat 5D, Harper Lewis watched quietly. Her posture was relaxed, but her instincts sharp beneath her calm exterior. A retired Navy SEAL, Harper had seen chaos erupt from quieter beginnings than this. She knew how violence could germinate unseen, sprouting from seeds of bitterness barely visible to the untrained eye. Harper had boarded the flight seeking rest, anonymity, a simple trip to reconnect with old friends in San Francisco. But years of living on edge had left her with an unshakable radar for trouble, and something about Nathan Carter was setting it off. Not loudly, not yet, but enough. As the passengers settled in, the captain's voice crackled over the speakers, welcoming everyone aboard, promising a smooth ride west across the continent. The engine's low rumble grew into a roar as the plane surged down the runway, lifting into a brilliant blue sky. Olivia squealed in delight, pressing her forehead against the window, marveling at how small the cars and houses became. Her excitement was contagious. Her father leaned closer, explaining how the plane would cross rivers, deserts, mountains, every detail feeding her imagination. Nathan Carter shifted uncomfortably, glancing sideways with a sneer. His resentment thickened, fueled by the very sight of their joy. "Can't they control that kid?" he muttered under his breath, low enough that only the nearest rouse caught the sharpness in his tone. Marcus heard it, but chose patience over confrontation. He focused on Olivia, quietly encouraging her to use her indoor voice, guiding her attention back to a coloring book from her backpack. Conflict could wait. Protecting his daughter's happiness came first, but Harper Lewis didn't look away. She clocked Nathan's clenched jaw, the flex of muscles in his arms, the way his breathing shallowly accelerated every time Olivia giggled. She didn't know his story, whether his hatred was born from upbringing, experience, or cowardice. But Harper knew this. Dangerous people often waited for a moment when they thought no one was paying attention. The plane soared westward, the city of Miami disappearing beneath layers of cloud. In the first hour, everything seemed ordinary. Snacks and drinks were served, passengers adjusted pillows and queued quietly for the lavatories. Olivia busied herself, drawing pictures of the mountains she imagined they would see, filling pages with bright purple peaks and pink sunsets. She proudly showed her drawings to Marcus, her cheeks glowing with pride. Nathan Carter stewed in silence, shooting glances over his coffee cup, watching, judging. In his mind, Olivia's very existence in his space was an affront. Harper, still pretending to flip through an in-flight magazine, caught every bitter glance, every slight snarl that curled his mouth. No one knew yet what Nathan Carter was truly capable of. No one but Harper sensed that this wasn't going to be one of those flights where everyone simply disembarks, forgetful of their neighbors. Some storms announce themselves with thunder. Others creep in quietly, waiting to strike when no one expects. A deep unease settled over the cabin. Tiny, almost imperceptible shifts, the stiffening of shoulders, the silence between laughs, the way conversations died down near row 4, hinted at an atmosphere changing from casual to charged. It was a feeling Harper had felt before, in far-off battlefields under foreign suns, moments before the air exploded with violence. She closed the magazine softly, placed it in the seat pocket, and sat up straighter. Her fingers lightly brushed her seatbelt, checking its tension, an old habit. If anything happened, she would not be caught unprepared. Far ahead, the flight attendants went about their duties, smiles plastered politely on their faces, unaware of the storm brewing 20 rows behind them. And through it all, Olivia kept smiling, kept coloring, kept dreaming of mountains and bridges and wide, open skies. She had no idea that evil sometimes boards a plane just like anyone else, with nothing but a ticket, a seat number, and a festering darkness hidden behind a human face. But Harper knew. And this time, Harper Lewis vowed silently to herself, if that darkness dared touch innocence, it would meet something stronger, the unyielding will of someone who had stared down monsters before, and would do it again without hesitation, no matter what. At 30,000 feet, Flight 742 glided through the endless blue sky, a small, fragile world suspended between two coasts. Inside the cabin, a quiet settled over the passengers, the kind of uneasy calm that feels more like a pause than true peace. The flight attendants moved briskly, offering drinks and snacks, exchanging polite smiles that couldn't quite mask their fatigue. Families murmured in low voices, travelers fidgeted with their seatbelts, and somewhere in the back, a baby cried softly. It all seemed ordinary, almost mundane. But tension, once seated, grows in silence. Nathan Carter sat rigidly in his aisle seat, one knee jiggling with restless irritation. His eyes flicked toward Marcus and Olivia every few minutes, each glance sharp with disdain. Olivia, unaware of the animosity gathering across the aisle, continued to fill her sketchpad with vibrant drawings, smiling suns, soaring birds, dreamlike cities that only a child could imagine. Her voice, a soft lilting hum, was barely more than a whisper. Yet to Nathan, it might as well have been a blaring siren. Marcus noticed the first time Nathan glared at Olivia. He caught it again when Nathan muttered under his breath, a phrase Marcus couldn't quite catch, but felt in his gut. He wrestled with the urge to confront the man, but told himself to stay focused. Olivia deserved better than for her joyful day to be tarnished by anger. Still, his heart beat harder against his ribs, an ancient warning that danger was nearer than it appeared. Across, and one row back, Harper Jameson watched too. She didn't look directly at Nathan, didn't make a scene. She simply observed the way his knuckles whitened around his coffee cup, how his chest rose and fell too fast for someone supposedly at rest. Harper had seen this posture before, in different countries and darker circumstances. It always preceded violence. It wasn't just dislike radiating off Nathan. It was something deeper, something twisted. Harper shifted in her seat, adjusting her posture so she could move quickly if needed. She had learned long ago that ignoring warning signs was a luxury she could never afford. Her instincts had saved lives before, and they screamed at her now to stay alert. Minutes turned into an hour. The plane flew steadily, but the tension simmered, invisible and heavy. Olivia, ever the optimist, leaned closer to the window, marveling at the patchwork fields far below. "Daddy, it looks like a giant quilt," she whispered, giggling. Marcus smiled warmly, squeezing her hand. He cherished these moments, the innocence, the wonder, the sheer unfiltered joy that came so easily to his daughter. But from the corner of his eye, he saw Nathan stiffen, heard the sharp exhale through his nose, like a man reaching the limits of patience he never intended to give. The flight attendants, sensing something amiss, but unsure what, kept checking on their passengers with smiles that seemed just a touch too forced. A few rows up, a woman glanced back, catching a glimpse of Nathan's scowl before quickly turning away. Fear has a way of making people small, invisible, and most on the plane instinctively chose to pretend nothing was wrong. Marcus didn't have that option. Neither did Harper. When a small turbulence rattled the plane, causing the lights to flicker briefly, many passengers chuckled nervously and returned to their screens or books. But Nathan's reaction was different. He flinched violently, muttering curses, his whole body tensing as though seeking an outlet for anger too long bottled up. Harper tensed too, watching Nathan with the cool, detached focus of someone who had faced the worst of humanity and survived. She didn't know exactly what Nathan might do, but she knew he was reaching a breaking point. It was there, just beneath his skin, waiting for an excuse. Meanwhile, Olivia asked for another apple juice, her voice small and polite. The flight attendant obliged with a kind smile, but as the cup exchanged hands, Nathan sneered audibly, Some kids just don't know how to behave, he muttered, loud enough for Marcus and Harper to hear. Marcus's jaw tightened. Harper's fingers curled slightly on the armrest. The hum of the plane engines filled the space between growing glances and tightening nerves. Around them, most passengers drifted in and out of restless sleep, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in seat 16C. Olivia, sensing her father's sudden stiffness, looked up, puzzled. "Daddy, is everything okay?" Marcus forced a smile. "Everything's fine, Pumpkin. Just keep coloring." But everything wasn't fine, not even close. The danger wasn't outside the plane. It sat among them, clothed in anger and ready to strike. And soon, the fragile thread, holding their safety together, would snap, with a force no one could ever forget. The hours ticked by with excruciating slowness, the hum of the engines filling the oppressive silence that had fallen over the cabin. Marcus leaned his head back against the seat, eyes closed but body tense, each muscle drawn taut like a wire ready to snap. Olivia had grown quieter too, sensing the heaviness even if she couldn't name it. Her crayon strokes less bold, the bright colors on her pages turning softer, almost timid. Harper watched Nathan Carter out of the corner of her eye, every fiber of her being alert. He had been simmering all flight, his anger building in incremental, nearly invisible degrees. Now, there was a new quality to his movements, a kind of reckless energy, a loss of control that made Harper's pulse quicken. She had seen it before, in men cornered in foreign cities, in enemies who realized they were losing control over the world around them. It was the look of someone desperate to inflict pain, if only to feel powerful for a fleeting second. It was a sneeze that finally broke him. A simple, innocent sneeze from Olivia as she leaned over to retrieve a dropped crayon. A sound so natural, so harmless, it should have passed unnoticed in the grand theater of a cross-country flight. But for Nathan Carter, it was the final affront. He slammed his magazine onto his tray table with a force that made nearby passengers jump. Heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. In an instant, the uneasy tension that had simmered for so long boiled over. Nathan twisted in his seat, his face contorted into something grotesque. Before anyone could react, he lashed out with a viciousness that stunned the entire cabin. His hand shot out, striking Olivia hard across the shoulder and side of her head. The sound, a sharp, sickening crack, seemed to hang in the air, echoing against the metal walls of the plane. Olivia cried out, a high, terrified sound that pierced every heart within earshot. Marcus was out of his seat in an instant, pulling his daughter to him, shielding her with his own body. Harper's training took over. She moved without thinking, her body already in motion before her mind could catch up. Passengers gasped, some shouting, others frozen in horror. A few scrambled for their phones, fumbling to capture the chaos unfolding before them. One flight attendant called out for calm, her voice trembling as she radioed the cockpit for immediate intervention. Nathan wasn't finished. He lunged again, spewing obscenities, his words twisted with hatred so vile that some passengers covered their mouths in shock. He hurled racial slurs at Marcus and Olivia with a venom Harper hadn't heard in years, each word a weapon meant to cut deeper than any physical blow. But this time, he didn't reach them. Harper stepped between Nathan and the Grants, her stance wide, her presence immovable. She grabbed Nathan's arm mid-swing, twisting it back with precise, practiced force. He cried out in surprise and pain, trying to wrench free, but Harper held firm. She maneuvered him back into his seat, pinning him there with a calm strength that brooked no resistance. "You're done," she said, her voice low and steady, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Nathan thrashed, shouting insults at Harper now, but it was too late. The spell of fear he had cast was broken. Other passengers stood up too, creating a wall of witnesses between him and the family he had attacked. A woman nearby handed Marcus tissues for Olivia's bloodied lip. A man in a business suit called for a doctor on board. Unity rose in the cabin like a tide, drowning out Nathan's rage with compassion and outrage. Marcus knelt by Olivia, whispering to her, tears streaming down his face. Olivia clung to him, sobbing quietly, her small body shaking in shock. Harper kept her body between them and Nathan, her heart aching at the sight of Olivia's pain, her own memories of helplessness flaring like old scars torn open again. The captain's voice came over the intercom, tight and controlled. They were diverting to Salt Lake City, he announced, for an emergency landing. Authorities would meet them at the gate. He urged all passengers to remain seated and calm. Calm. The word felt almost laughable in the aftermath of such senseless violence. Flight attendants rushed forward with plastic restraints, the kind meant for situations they were trained to believe would never happen. Harper helped secure Nathan's wrists, her hands steady even as adrenaline flooded her veins. Nathan continued to spew hatred, his voice hoarse and cracking, a pitiful figure of impotent fury trapped in a body that could no longer do harm. Harper turned her gaze back to Olivia. The little girl's eyes were wide and glassy, her face streaked with tears. Marcus held her close, whispering promises, apologies, prayers. No child should ever have to endure such terror, Harper thought. No father should have to watch his daughter hurt because of the color of her skin. As the plane descended, a heavy, grieving silence filled the cabin. Strangers, who had once been content to ignore each other, now exchanged glances, full of shared sorrow and anger. A woman across the aisle mouthed, "I'm so sorry," to Marcus. A man near the front dabbed his eyes with a napkin. When the wheels touched down on the Salt Lake City runway, the relief was so visceral it nearly buckled Harper's knees. But she stayed standing, guarding Marcus and Olivia until uniformed officers boarded the plane. Nathan Carter was hauled away, still muttering vile words under his breath, but no one listened anymore. He was nothing now, just another bitter coward who mistook cruelty for strength. As officers spoke with Marcus and offered medical assistance for Olivia, Harper knelt beside them. Olivia blinked at her through teary lashes. "You're safe now," Harper whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise." And for the first time since that terrible moment, Olivia nodded. Harper didn't realize until then that she too was crying. The cabin, once humming with quiet anticipation, now buzzed with shock and rage. Passengers stared, mouths agape, as Nathan was pinned against his seat, struggling fruitlessly against Harper's iron grip. Olivia sobbed into Marcus's chest, her small body trembling, the echo of Nathan's assault still hanging in the charged air. Flight attendants rushed forward, one with a pair of plastic zip ties meant for the worst kind of emergencies, a measure rarely, almost never, needed on commercial flights. Harper maintained control, her voice low but firm, guiding the attendants through the process of securing Nathan's wrists. Her years of training showed in every movement, calm, efficient, unwavering. Nathan spat curses under his breath, eyes wild, his hate still refusing to burn itself out. But the cabin had shifted. Where once his quiet resentment had gone unnoticed, now he stood exposed, not as a frustrated traveler, but as a man filled with poison. And no one would look away this time. Marcus held Olivia tighter, murmuring reassurances in her ear. He could barely believe what had happened. Part of him wanted to explode with fury, to confront Nathan with every ounce of the rage burning inside him. But when he looked into his daughter's tear-streaked face, he knew his path had to be different. She needed him strong. She needed him safe. As the plane's captain made the urgent announcement that they would be diverting to Dallas for an emergency landing, the mood inside the cabin became one of solidarity. Strangers, once locked in their own silent worlds, now exchanged glances of shared outrage. A woman across the aisle offered Marcus tissues for Olivia. A man 2 rows back asked if they needed anything, a snack, water, anything to comfort the little girl. Community had blossomed in the broken place where hatred had tried to take root. The landing was rougher than usual, the wheels hitting the runway with a heavy jolt. As the plane taxied to the gate, a squad of uniformed officers waited on the tarmac, their presence a sobering reminder of how serious the situation had become. When the doors opened, the officers boarded quickly. Harper stepped back, giving a concise, calm explanation of Nathan's actions. Several passengers stood up, demanding the officers take Nathan away. "He hit that little girl," one woman cried. Another man added, "We have videos. He needs to pay for this." Nathan, his bravado crumbling under the weight of public condemnation, shouted one final slur as he was led down the aisle. Gasps followed him like a bitter trail of smoke. Harper watched, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She felt no pride in restraining him, only a fierce protectiveness for Olivia and Marcus, and a burning sadness that a child's innocence had been wounded by such ugliness. After Nathan was taken away, paramedics boarded to check on Olivia. Though bruised, she appeared physically okay, but the trauma had etched itself into her wide, fearful eyes. A female paramedic knelt beside her, speaking gently, complimenting her bravery. Olivia nodded slowly, clutching the small teddy bear the woman offered. In the waiting area of the Dallas terminal, Marcus, Harper, and a few key witnesses gave statements to the police. Harper, recounting every detail with a precision that impressed even the officers, ensured the truth was unmistakable. Nathan's actions were not a momentary lapse, but a culmination of deep-seated hatred. Marcus struggled to hold back tears as he described what had happened, feeling waves of helplessness and anger crash inside him. But when he looked at Olivia, so small, yet so strong, he found his center again. This wasn't just about punishment. It was about setting an example, about showing his daughter that courage and goodness would always answer hatred. Passengers who had remained silent at first now found their voices. Several approached Marcus and Harper, offering support, hugs, words of encouragement. One woman, a grandmother traveling alone, grasped Marcus's hand tightly and said, "You're not alone. We're all standing with you." The airline arranged hotel accommodations for Marcus, Olivia, and Harper for the night, offering a heartfelt apology and pledging full cooperation with authorities. They even promised to cover medical costs and offered counseling services. Small gestures, perhaps, but deeply meaningful in a moment where it felt like the world had cracked open. That evening, sitting in a quiet hotel room with a sleepy Olivia resting against his side, Marcus felt the first real tears fall, not out of weakness, but out of profound, overwhelming gratitude for Harper's courage, for the strangers who refused to stay silent, and for the fragile but undeniable proof that in the face of darkness, there were always those who would choose light. Harper stopped by the hotel room before heading to her own, just to check on them. Olivia looked up at her, eyes still rimmed with sadness, but shining with something new: trust. "Are you leaving?" Olivia asked softly. Harper knelt down to be eye level with her. "Just for tonight, sweetheart. But I'm not far, and I'm always just a call away." Olivia wrapped her small arms around Harper's neck in a silent hug that said more than words ever could. As Harper stood and met Marcus's eyes, there was a silent agreement between them. This was not the end. They would see this through, together. They would make sure the message was clear. Hate had no place here, and in its place, they would build something stronger, something enduring. The weeks that followed the incident felt surreal to Marcus and Olivia. Every time they closed their eyes, fragments of that terrible flight replayed: the raised voices, the slap of hatred, the trembling aftermath. But amid the shadows, there was also something unexpected: a growing tide of support. The videos captured by passengers went viral, flooding social media and national news outlets. Stories of a small black girl attacked midair and the off-duty Navy SEAL who intervened captured the country's attention. Overnight, Marcus and Olivia found themselves at the center of a conversation far bigger than they had imagined. Civil rights organizations reached out with offers of legal support. Messages of solidarity poured in from strangers across the country. Handwritten letters, colorful drawings from children, donations to help cover counseling costs. At first, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the exposure, but soon he realized that something powerful was unfolding. People were choosing to care, to act, to refuse to let hatred be the final word. Meanwhile, Nathan sat in a Dallas jail cell, his smirk long gone. Charges were filed swiftly: assault of a minor, endangering a child, and, perhaps most significantly, a hate crime enhancement. His history, once hidden, surfaced under the scrutiny. Prior complaints of racist behavior, aggressive outbursts at work, a pattern that now painted a damning portrait. This time, the system would not look away. When the preliminary hearing arrived, Marcus, Olivia, and Harper stood side by side inside the courthouse, a silent wall of strength. Olivia clutched Marcus's hand tightly, her small fingers wrapped around his, and glanced up at Harper, who gave her a reassuring nod. Together, they faced Nathan once more. The evidence spoke louder than any defense Nathan's lawyer could muster. Videos played in open court, the hateful words, the violence, the collective gasp of the passengers, none of it could be denied. Witnesses testified, their voices firm and clear. Harper recounted her intervention with the same composed resolve she had shown on the plane. But when she spoke of Olivia's bravery, her voice softened with genuine emotion. Marcus spoke too, his voice thick with feeling, but steady. He told the court about Olivia's innocence, about the excitement she'd carried onto that plane, about how it had been shattered in an instant by cruelty she couldn't even fully comprehend. When the judge ruled that Nathan would stand trial with the full weight of the charges intact, there was a quiet, collective exhale among those gathered. Justice wasn't finished yet, but it was moving forward, and that mattered. Throughout it all, Marcus marveled at Olivia's resilience. Therapy sessions helped her begin to unpack the fear and confusion she'd bottled up inside. Some nights, she still woke crying, but more and more often, she woke with a peaceful smile. Marcus found himself healing too, not by forgetting, but by embracing the truth that they were not alone. They were part of something larger, a community bound together by the shared belief that goodness must always answer hatred. As for Harper, she became more than just the woman who stepped up. She became a friend, a steadfast presence in their lives. She visited often, helping Olivia feel safe again, teaching her simple self-defense moves, sharing stories of kindness and courage from her years of service. In those small moments, Olivia's laughter returned, timid at first, then stronger. The day of Nathan's trial brought a final reckoning. After testimony and witness accounts, after the painful retelling of every cruel word and act, the verdict came down. Guilty on all counts. The hate crime enhancement stuck, a clear message sent. Nathan would serve real time behind bars, and more importantly, his actions would be permanently recorded as a warning. Outside the courthouse, Marcus lifted Olivia into his arms. Cameras flashed, reporters called out questions, but he only cared about the tiny voice that whispered in his ear. "Daddy, are we safe now?" He kissed her forehead and whispered back, "Yes, baby. We're safe." In the months that followed, Marcus, Olivia, and Harper chose not to let the trauma define them. Instead, they used it as a foundation for something better. Marcus spoke at community forums about standing against racism. Harper worked with organizations to advocate for stronger protections for vulnerable passengers. And Olivia, sweet, resilient Olivia, started a small project at her school, a kindness club dedicated to helping kids stand up for each other. Their journey hadn't erased the pain, but it had rewritten the story. It was no longer just about what Nathan had done. It was about how they had responded, with courage, with compassion, and with an unbreakable belief in the goodness of people. And that, in the end, was the most powerful victory of all. As we reflect on the harrowing yet inspiring journey of Marcus, Olivia, and Harper, it becomes clear that this story is about far more than one terrible act of hatred aboard a flight. It is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering strength of a father's love, and the quiet courage of a protector who refused to stand by in the face of injustice. Marcus boarded that plane simply as a father, excited to show his daughter the wonders of a new city. Olivia, full of innocent excitement, represented the hope and joy that every child should carry without fear. But in a moment, their lives were altered by Nathan's unprovoked aggression, a cruel reminder that racism still lurks even in the most ordinary spaces. Yet, the story did not end in despair. Because when Nathan's hatred exploded into violence, Harper, a retired Navy SEAL who understood the true meaning of service, stood up. She didn't hesitate, and she didn't waver. Her courage not only protected Olivia in that critical moment, but also showed every person on that flight, and everyone who heard this story, that silence is never an option when faced with injustice. In the aftermath, Marcus and Olivia faced the daunting task of healing. Through community support, therapy, and the steadfast friendship of Harper, they found a path forward. They chose not to let that moment define them through fear, but to transform it into an engine for positive change. Olivia's Kindness Club became a small but powerful beacon of hope, reminding us all that even from pain, new strength can grow. Harper's actions remind us that everyday heroism is within reach for all of us. She didn't act because she had special training, although it certainly helped, but because she believed deeply that standing up for what's right is not optional. It's a duty. Her presence gave Marcus and Olivia more than just safety that day. It gave them a glimpse of the good that still exists in a world that sometimes feels overwhelmed by hate. The lessons from this story are as real and urgent today as ever. Hatred, bigotry, and violence must be confronted wherever they appear, whether on a plane, in a classroom, at work, or in our own neighborhoods. Courage is not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to intervene, to offer a hand, or to say, "This is not acceptable." Applying this lesson to our daily lives means cultivating vigilance, empathy, and action. It means speaking up when we witness discrimination. It means teaching our children to celebrate differences rather than fear them. It means holding our institutions and ourselves accountable to the ideals we claim to believe in. Ultimately, this story reminds us that healing is possible. Justice, when fought for relentlessly, can prevail. And the power of goodness, when summoned even by one person, can ripple outward in ways we may never fully see, but that matter deeply. As you finish this story, let it stay with you. Let Marcus, Olivia, and Harper's journey be more than a passing headline. Let it be a spark, a call to action in your own life to protect, uplift, and stand alongside those who need you. If you found this story moving, inspiring, or thought-provoking, we warmly invite you to subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels our mission to bring real, powerful stories like this to light. Every subscription, every share, every comment makes a difference and motivates us to continue creating content that not only touches hearts, but also ignites change. Hit that subscribe button now and join a growing community that believes in courage, kindness, and the unstoppable power of good. Thank you for being here. And remember, sometimes it only takes one voice to change the world. Maybe next time, that voice will be yours.